Thank you.
It's a chilly January morning in Ottawa in 1992. David Milgaard walks up the steps of the Supreme Court. He's got a dark red jacket on, and his wavy hair is in a bit of a mullet. He's nearly 40, but his teenage good looks haven't left him. After more than 2 decades behind bars, being here is a rare taste of freedom. And as he heads into the courthouse, he's swarmed by reporters.
Any thoughts going in?
He looks over his shoulder, smiles, and tells them what he's here to do.
I'm here to tell the truth.
He's here to tell the truth. David's family is also here for the truth, including his sister, Susan.
I remember walking up the stairs and just feeling so incredibly small. And I'm thinking, yeah, this is David and Goliath we have here. But at the same time, I have this hope because we fought really, really hard to get there.
And Laura Lynch is there too, reporting on it all.
Yes, I'm there, part of a big crowd of journalists and spectators lining up in the early, cold, dark hours. We all know we're about to witness history.
I'm Falen Johnson, and this is See You in Court, a podcast about the cases that changed Canada. And today, Laura Lynch has the second part of the murder case against David Milgaard. So, Laura, can you remind us what it took for David Milgaard to get here to the Supreme Court?
In our last episode, we heard about his conviction for the murder of nurse's aide Gail Miller back in 1970. He and his family have been fighting for his innocence ever since, 22 years now. And they finally won a rare victory. The Minister of Justice has sent his case to the country's highest court. 5 justices are set to hear whether David should get a new trial, whether he was wrongfully convicted.
And David Milgaard has become a bit of a national obsession, right?
Yeah, and I'm one of the obsessed. I went to law school, I got called to the bar, then I came back to journalism with a laser focus on justice reporting. I've been to the Supreme Court many times before, but this is different. Normally, it's lawyers arguing points of law before the justices. This time, there will be testimony. They actually have to build a witness box. And so there's all the drama of a murder trial. It's actually only the second time in the history of the top court that it will hear live testimony. And David finally gets a chance to say publicly in a court what he's never been able to say to judges before. It's the highlight of the first day and the lead in the story I file.
Here is the CBC News.
Milgaard appeared relaxed as he arrived at the Supreme Court this morning with his lawyers. He took his place on the witness stand, sitting directly in front of 5 judges, telling them right away that he did not kill Gail Miller. Milgaard admitted.
Now, this moment is key. David had never told his side of the story in court. Here, at the Supreme Court, he finally gets his chance to take the stand.
And to actually be there and have David stand up, get into the chair and say, I did not kill Gail Miller, was the most moving moment, I think, of my life.
And as the hearings continue, there are so many powerful moments. David's old friends whose testimony helped convict him appear, police officers defending their work. At one point, the Chief Justice accuses one witness of outright lying. This usually sedate, dignified chamber has become a trial courtroom. And in the midst of it, David Milgaard listening, waiting. During breaks, he's on the courthouse steps smoking and chatting with his family, with his lawyer, David Asper. At the end of each day, he returns to the halfway house where he's been staying during the hearings, a break from prison life. But right at the start of the second week, my phone rings in the wee hours, and the news is startling. David Asper's phone rings too.
I got a call that he was missing, he was AWOL.
No one can find David. He's not at the halfway house where he should be. So the police are called in. I remember you looking quite stricken.
Well, very stricken. Because, he has a record of escaping.
And Falen, I have to tell you, for those of us covering the case, this is a really shocking turn of events. Some of us think maybe he's done a runner, even though he's finally getting the chance to have the case reopened.
Right, so why would he escape? Why would he do that now?
Well, that's a good question. They do find him a few hours later at the halfway house, and he says he never left, and that he went out on the back deck to look up at the sky, just enjoying being outside.
I mean, that's pretty understandable, seeing as he's been locked up for so long. Like, I would want to see the night sky, too.
Right, and whatever happened that night, it's the end of David's time in Ottawa. He's immediately sent back to prison for the rest of the hearings.
And there goes that little bit of freedom.
Yeah, and that means he's not there to see the rest of the case unfold. And as it goes on without him, all of the proceedings are building up to the final witness. So much of David's request for a new trial is relying on showing Larry Fischer should have been investigated as a suspect, considered as the murderer. And if police had done that, David might never have been charged, much less convicted. Fischer's already in jail serving time for a string of violent rapes. Joyce's dogged detective work talking to his other victims shows that those rapes share strikingly similar details to the attack on Gail Miller. So there's a lot on the line when Larry Fischer walks into court. And as he starts to testify, it's clear that not only does he have a consistent method to his awful attacks, he actually seems kind of proud of them. David's senior lawyer, Hirsch Walsh, has consulted psychologists about how to appeal to Fischer's ego, encouraging him to openly admit to the details of his modus operandi. And I can see everyone in the courtroom is riveted. Everyone.
And the justices' eyes sort of bugged out of their heads as this was unfolding, because we would go victim by victim by victim by victim, and Hirsch would take Fischer through each victim to establish this signature that then was everything that had happened to Gail Miller, the victim in the David Milgaard case.
David Asper watches in awe as Hirsch Walsh continues, sort of treating Fischer like an expert, in a weird way, kind of flattering him to encourage him to say more, to say something to implicate himself.
Hirsch was taking him through one particular victim, and Fischer interrupted him and actually improved the position that we were trying to make by elaborating on details that brought him even closer to what had happened to Gail Miller. And he did it because his ego didn't want to allow us to miss something of the way he committed his crimes. The justices, a lot of them, their eyes just went straight down, and I think they were probably saying, I can't believe that just happened.
Maybe they couldn't believe that it just happened, but the Chief Justice has heard enough to do something extraordinary. He invites Larry Fischer to confess to murdering Gail Miller right there, right then. It can all end. Milgaard exonerated, case closed. But Larry Fischer says no, it isn't him. The hearings end. The judges file back into their chambers. The witness box is dismantled. All is quiet. But only for a few weeks. It seems the Supreme Court saw and heard enough. It's now April the 14th, 1992, and I'm rushing to break the news.
This morning, the Supreme Court issued a warning to the Justice Minister and the justice system. The court said Milgaard would be the victim of a miscarriage of justice if there wasn't a new trial to consider new evidence.
So the Supreme Court recommends a new trial?
Yes, but I want to be clear. The Supreme Court also notes there was what it calls ample evidence at that original trial to implicate David Milgaard and justify the jury's guilty verdict. But the Supreme Court also says fresh evidence about Larry Fischer and his attacks on other women could affect a jury's findings if the case was tried again. That same day, Justice Minister Kim Campbell takes the court's advice.
I have today signed a direction under Section 690 of the Criminal Code providing Mr. Milgaard with a new trial.
But here's the thing. 2 days later, the province of Saskatchewan says no to a new trial.
Why?
Well, it says too much time has passed, more than 20 years now, to be able to mount a proper prosecution against David. Within hours, he is walking free from Stony Mountain Penitentiary.
I'm sorry, I'm just going down the hill. I'm not saying anything. There's going to be a conference down the hill, and I'm going home.
Milgaard had only one thing on his mind as he struggled through the pack of reporters and well-wishers.
How far is the car?
His lawyer.
Now you can hear a bit of impatience in his voice. His life is starting over again today, and he just wants to get on with it. Holding hands with his mom and his sisters, they bundle into the car and drive away. And Susan, sitting beside her brother, knows where the first stop is.
So we got in the car with David, drove down to the bottom of the hill to the Rocky Mountain Inn and bought him a beer. And that was fun for him.
Did he say how it tasted?
Oh, yeah, I said it was delicious.
And there's one other thing David does that day. He wants to buy his mom the perfect red rose.
He'd never really been in to pick up a flower before, so he was really all shaky and not quite sure where to go, where to look, how to act in front of people. Then to go and pick out the perfect rose, like how do you buy the perfect rose? Because that's what you want for your mother. It's the perfect one, of course. Then to take it over to the till and pay for it, wait to have it wrapped, not knowing that, they wrap them for you and so on and so forth. So he was pretty shaky through the whole thing. Brand new experience, of course. He was so proud to be able to walk out there and give it to her.
Why was that so important for him?
Because of everything she did. She was his rose.
Late breaking story on the CBC. A nation whispers we always knew that he'd go free.
The song Wheat Kings is released in 1992 by the Tragically Hip, and that's the same year David goes free. The lead singer, Gord Downey, says it's about David Milgaard and his faith in himself.
And pretty fair. Let's just see what tomorrow brings.
Wow, I didn't know that, and that song hits a lot different now. Like those lyrics, "A nation whispers, we always knew that he'd go free."
Yeah, Falen, the first time Joyce Milgaard heard those words, she cried. And for Susan, the words, "Let's just see what tomorrow brings," they're an echo of the hope her family maintained during this 23-year-long fight. When I hear Gord Downey singing 20 years for nothing, well, that's nothing new. Besides, no one's interested in something you didn't do. It's also a really poignant reminder of how David's story changed the way Canadians view their justice system.
And what do you mean by that? How do you think David changed the Canadian justice system?
Well, I think before this case, there was a sense that though maybe it had some flaws, the justice system was actually pretty good, that it worked. And compared to the United States, where there were and are far more examples of wrongful convictions, Canada was doing relatively well. But this case just shattered those illusions. And for David, of course, it's personal. He's now finally a free man. But his fight is far from over, because now that he knows just how badly the justice system can get it wrong, well, he has some unfinished business.
Can I just clarify something? David's released, but he's still not guilty, if I can put it that way. Like, he's not exonerated.
Yeah, that's right. His name isn't cleared. It actually takes several more years and advances in DNA testing technology, not only to definitively say he isn't guilty, but to prove that Larry Fischer is the man who did it. Fischer's convicted in 1999, and David eventually wins $10 million in compensation from Saskatchewan. The money gives him a chance to be generous with those who helped him. Remember that first time he and David Asper met when he was in prison?
Right, the lawyer with the motorcycle and the beat-up helmet.
That's right. Turns out David Milgaard promised to get his lawyer a new helmet if he got him out of prison.
Okay, did he?
Well, he did him one better.
And he calls me one day, and he had two motorcycles lined up. One was a huge Honda touring bike, and the other was a Harley. And he said, pick one. I owe you my life. Pick one, and it's yours. And he had a custom plate made up that said DM2DA. And that was his gift to me. And I rode that for a long time.
Just in case that's not clear, that DM2DA, the license plate means David Milgaard to David Asper.
Okay, so which bike did he choose, though?
Oh, Harley, of course.
Okay, silly question. I'm not a bike person, but...
Meanwhile, David is actually trying to settle into a normal life. But time in jail has robbed him of years of experience in just how to do that. I mean, he went in as a teenager. He's out as a 39-year-old man. He gets into scrapes with the law. He gets married, divorced, remarried, has 2 kids. But he never stops working to fix the system that put him away. Time and again, he speaks to law students like these ones in Saskatoon.
I've spent almost 23 years of my life inside of Canada's worst prisons. It was a nightmare. People do not have much love and care inside those walls.
Now, David's encouraging these budding lawyers to be caring, to be careful, and to consider those who they may defend or prosecute with his own vivid example of how a jury can convict the wrong guy. One of the last times that David Asper and David Milgaard spend time together is at a panel discussion at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights in 2019. At this point, it's been almost 50 years since his arrest.
There was a moment when he took control of the room, and he actually took a mic, and a handheld mic, and he was walking around the room, and he was getting very emphatic about what had happened to him, how it can happen to you, the system is imperfect, and he was telling his story. And I had a flashback that was, it was scary how vivid this flashback was in the moment, where I was looking at David all those years later at a big conference, but what I was seeing was David in that meeting room the first time I met him. And I was kind of seeing a sequence of flashes of images from that time. David in the hole trying to tell him that the application had been turned down. David at the parole hearing. David at this, David at that. And it was like a deck of cards of images. And it made me cry, actually. I had trouble holding it together, watching him be so passionate and fierce in his advocacy, but reminding myself where he was when we first found him. And it was heartwarming on the one hand, but what a waste. What a waste of what the system did to that poor guy.
David Milgaard never, ever loses his desire to be outside under the sky. It's as if he needs to be reminded that he's no longer locked away. And in 2022, as he's spending a night out camping with his daughter, David becomes short of breath. The next day, he dies of complications from pneumonia at the age of 69. with David gone, Susan feels a responsibility to keep sharing her brother's story. She also feels a responsibility to keep working to free other wrongfully convicted people. Sometimes it's tempting to turn away from the pain. Both the work and the memories are a heavy burden. In fact, when I first asked her to talk to me for this podcast, her first answer was,
"No, I don't want to do that." But then I will look at my picture of my mom and I'll look at the picture of David. I have Mom, Dad, and David all in one frame, and I'll just go, "Yeah, right. You'd do it, wouldn't you?" And then I hear this cowboy up in my head, and so away I go and got a hold of you to say, yes, I would. It's really tough for me. I've spent most of my life, and I'm 70 now, living this lie, that happened. And I honestly don't think I'll ever be past it. So if there is some way of doing this that can help someone else not to have to go through what I'm going through, and to maybe make it one day less that somebody that is wrongfully convicted is locked up, how can I not do it? Because there's so many that are still in there, and they have nobody. So that's why I do it.
I kind of find it shocking that after all these years, she's still doing this work, still fighting. And it does make me wonder, how many other people like David Milgaard are there in prison today in Canada, people, as Susan points out, who don't have a family to fight for them.
Well, the fact is that there are still people who are sitting in prison cells for something they say they didn't do. Maybe the police investigation was compromised. Maybe witnesses lied or were coerced. The state has so much power in the criminal justice system. David and Joyce both spent years lobbying Ottawa to depoliticize the way cases like his are treated. They wanted an independent commission. And you know what? Neither of them lived to see it, but it's happening. Parliament passed the legislation just recently, and it's actually named the Joyce and David Milgaard Law. This new commission should help those cases be reviewed more efficiently without any political considerations. And I think there's a lesson that we can take from David Milgaard's story, that those with so much power over people's lives must wield it so carefully. For David Asper, this story holds another meaning.
For me, the legacy of David Milgaard is the human spirit. And the fact that the system couldn't beat him. And he stood defiant every single step of the way. And it's inspiring. It makes me happy. It makes me sad. It brings back all kinds of memories. But I am forever etched with power, I think. Power from David Milgaard. That when there's a wrong, don't give in.
If you liked hearing about David Milgaard, you should check out next week's episode. Donald Marshall's story starts with another wrongful conviction, but that's just the beginning. The Mi'kmaq Fischer takes on a second fight to secure treaty rights for First Nations people looking to just make a living. See You in Court is hosted and produced by me, Falen Johnson. And if you like what you hear, make sure to recommend this show to your most justice-motivated pal. They probably need some hope on any given day. The song you heard in this episode was Wheat Kings by the Tragically Hip. It's from the album Fully Completely, produced by Universal Music. Laura Lynch reported and wrote this episode. Catherine Rosen is our senior producer. Sam McNulty is our sound designer. Carla Hilton is our executive producer.